Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the Second Chance Act Smart Supervision Grant Program Orientation webinar. The purpose of this webinar is to share information about the grant program, resources that are available to support your work, and to answer questions about expectations for the grant period. My name is Heather Tubman-Carbone. I'm a Technical Assistance Manager at the Council of State Governments Justice Center and will be presenting today along with Daisy Diallo of the Justice Center. Daisy is the primary TA provider to Smart Supervision Grantees, and Julie James, Senior Policy Advisor at the Bureau of Justice Assistance. I'm excited to share that we are also joined by Jillian, Director of Research at the Philadelphia Adult Probation and Parole Department, an FY2013 Smart Supervision Grantee. Thanks to all of you for joining the webinar and to BJA in Philadelphia for partnering with us on this presentation. Before getting started, I'd like to briefly talk through a couple of housekeeping items about how the webinar is going to work. At any time during the webinar, you can ask a question by typing it into the Q&A panel on the bottom right-hand portion of your screen. This includes both technical and content-related questions. We will try to reply to technical questions in the chat window as we go along. For the content-related questions, we will keep a running list and address them at the end of the webinar. We will do our best to get through as many questions as possible. If you encounter technical or audio problems during the webinar that we are not able to resolve, please call WebEx Technical Support at 1-866-229-3239. We are recording the content portion of this webinar and will post it to our website, and we'll also share it with you via email next week. First things first, congratulations. BJA selected your 7 jurisdictions out of applications from across the country to receive this Second Chance Act grant. The Second Chance Act has supported over $300 million in reentry investments to a variety of initiatives across the country. The Bureau of Justice Assistance administers these grants, including the Smart Supervision Program. Today's webinar is organized into 4 parts. First, we'll introduce the CSG Justice Center. Then, we'll provide an overview of the Smart Supervision Grant Program. We will hear from Jillian at the Philadelphia Adult Probation and Parole Department about her agency's experience with the Smart Supervision Grant. Julie James at BJA will walk us through some of BJA's expectations for grantees, as well as some key program requirements. Then we'll talk about technical assistance available to support your work, and we will wrap up with a question and answer session. Please note, the Smart Supervision Program is also referred to as SSP. We'll start with an introduction. Daisy?
Thanks, Heather. On behalf of the staff and board of the Justice Center, I congratulate you on your selection as a Second Chance Act grantee. So who is the Justice Center? The Justice Center is a national nonprofit organization that serves policymakers at the local, state, and federal levels from all branches of government. Staff provides practical, nonpartisan advice and evidence-based, consensus-driven strategies to increase public safety and strengthen communities. Next slide, please. Within the Justice Center, the National Reentry Resource Center is funded by the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and we provide support to the SCA grantees and the broader field. The Second Chance Act, which was signed into law in 2008, is the first federal legislation to authorize federal support for reentry programs. Recognizing how complex reentry initiatives are and the importance of integrating research and evidence into those initiatives, the Second Chance Act authorized the creation of the National Resource Center for Adult and Juvenile Reentry. In 2009, following a competitive process, the Justice Center was selected to launch the National Reentry Resource Center and provide training and technical assistance to all Second Chance Act grantees. We administer the NRRC, for short, in close partnership with BJA. The Second Chance Act grant programs are highly competitive and sought after, and policymakers at the federal, state, and local level are looking to Second Chance Act grantees to advance our understanding of effective reentry and recidivism reduction practices. We're wholeheartedly committed to providing support that will help you make the most of your grants, and we look forward to working with each of you as you implement your projects. Next slide, please. So what does the NRRC do exactly? The NRRC, or the National Reentry Resource Center, has 4 main objectives as a training and technical assistance provider. We aim to provide a one-stop interactive source of current, user-friendly reentry information. We hope to identify, document, and promote evidence-based practices, in part by collecting information from you on how you implement your projects. We advance the reentry field through training, distance learning, and knowledge development. We also deliver individualized, targeted technical assistance to Second Chance Act grantees such as yourself. Every grantee has been assigned to an NRRC staff member, and for all of you, that will be me, Daisy Diallo. I will reach out to you soon to learn more about your project and to provide you that individualized technical assistance. In the meantime, however, there's a wealth of information available on our website that may be helpful as you launch your projects. I'll spend a few minutes walking through those sections of the website you may find particularly helpful. Next slide, please. So the website has issue pages or areas, issue areas and pages dedicated to those areas, where we provide content on key reentry topics such as health, employment, performance measurement, among other things. Each topic page provides links to research, publications, and news clips about that subject. The NRRC regularly hosts webinars on a variety of topics related to reentry, and all webinars are recorded, archived, and available on our website. You can find these distance learning tools under Resources. I don't know if you guys can make it out there, but it's one of those tabs that's circled in that red bold circle. Also under Resources, you can find publications. The NRRC is building a large online library of publications related to reentry. To date, there are over 1,200 items in our library. Through the search box up there, you could access our publications as well as any publications in our library. The Justice Center is also home to several projects such as the Reentry and Employment Project and the What Works in Reentry Clearinghouse I highly recommend. The Employment Project is rooted in working with business leaders, policymakers, and practitioners across the country working on in the field of corrections and in workforce to collaborate with the goal of improving reentry and employment outcomes for individuals with criminal histories. The Clearinghouse is a one-stop shop for research on the effectiveness of a wide variety of reentry programs and practices developed in partnership with the Urban Institute. Next slide, please. We are constantly adding new resources, webinars, funding opportunities, and other news to our website. And we send out a monthly newsletter that will connect you with those new resources. So we highly encourage you to go onto this page and click that button that says subscribe that's highlighted in that red bubble there, so you can get updates regularly from our website. Now, just wanted to give you a quick overview of, the orientation process that you're undergoing presently as a new Second Chance Act grantee for Smart Supervision. You may have been a part of the fiscal year 15 kind of orientation webinar that took place on October 22nd. That second bullet refers to what you're going through today. And then after today, I look forward to reaching out to you guys and trying to kick off technical assistance, you know, schedule some recurring meetings so we have touch points regularly. And then after that, shortly after that, at the Second Chance Act conference in December, I get to meet with all of you in person, and you'll get a chance to meet your fellow grantees and experts in the field. I can assure you that we have a stellar lineup in terms of presenters and opportunities to have discussions and meet your fellow grantees, not only from your current fiscal year, but also from those who got this grant last year. Might be able to talk to you again, might be able to speak with you regarding you know, successes and hurdles that they've experienced and so forth. So by now, you should have received an email inviting you to register for the Second Chance Act conference that will take place this December on the 16th through to the 18th in Washington, D.C. If you've not received this invitation, please email me after this webinar and I'll connect you with all the information you need to make that happen. Next slide, please.
Thank you very much, Daisy. Now let's get more specific about the Smart Supervision Grant Program. The Smart Supervision Program reflects a number of trends in community supervision. The first trend we've seen, and that's reflected in many of your projects, relates to conditions of supervision. And there are 2 points to keep in mind here. The first, as I'm sure you've all experienced, is that conditions of supervision should be tailored based on R&R factors. And those R&R factors are risk, needs, and responsivity. The conditions of supervision should also reflect the 3 R's identified by APPA. Conditions of supervision should be realistic, meaning they should be limited in number so that individuals under supervision can satisfy them and that officers can reasonably monitor them. Conditions of supervision should be relevant, that is, they should be informed by validated risk and needs assessments, and conditions of supervision should also be research-based. They should be focused on interventions and rules proven to reduce crime and promote successful outcomes. This trend, as well as the other 4 that we'll go through in a moment, are reflected in many of your Smart Supervision projects, and these also reflect areas that were available to provide technical assistance around. The second trend is about case management. Best practices in case management show that empirical assessments should be used to identify dynamic risk factors as well as criminogenic needs. Motivational interviewing is a great tool to identify goals, strengths, and stability factors of supervision clients. As the technical assistance providers to the Smart Supervision grants, we've been very excited to see grantees take on a small training component for a small contingent of their jurisdiction's officers and watch the motivational interviewing techniques transform the way that the entire agency conducts supervision. The third piece of the case management trend is a team approach, which includes correctional counselors, treatment providers, employment counselors, and mentors. It's also critical to consider that the client is a member of the team defining the case plan. We've also seen a trend, and it is a best practice, that assessment and interview results are used to rank target areas for intervention. Jurisdictions should define specific action steps to achieve the client's goals. And as the term rank and target implies, the idea is that we should not be asking clients to meet too many requirements at one time. Instead, we should identify priority areas. Additionally, jurisdictions should be defining sanctions and incentives and should share those schemes with their clients and implement them with swiftness and certainty to respond to qualifying situations. As you'll hear later, one of the things we can do for technical assistance is to provide you with information about best practices in the field. While Swift, Certain, and Fair has received a great amount of press for Project HOPE in Hawaii, it's also important to consider that lessons from that project may be implemented in your jurisdiction without a wholesale implementation of a swift, certain, and fair project, and we're happy to bring those lessons to your doorstep. Jurisdictions should also be reassessing clients at defined intervals or in response to defined trigger events, such as successful completion of a program, compliance violations, or loss of a job. And lastly, case management plans should be updated given new risk factors, levels, goals, and strategies. The third trend we've seen is about supervision responses. APPA and the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges has identified 5 principles of effective incentives and sanctions. Folks are familiar with the swift, certain, and fair principles, but proportionate and individualized are equally important. Responses should be commensurate to the magnitude of the achievement or transgression by a client. Additionally, responses should be tailored to clients' need, risk, learning styles, abilities, and motivations to change. And that last piece is particularly where motivational interviewing can come in handy. The fourth trend we've seen is about quality programs, and specifically about supporting community-based organizations to use evidence-based practices in their treatment and programs. So first, agencies and community-based organizations should research their target population to determine the needs of participants, and risk and needs assessments are invaluable here. Also, jurisdictions should learn whether there are a sufficient number of programs and program slots in each domain to address the given needs. You should review the content of programs to assess fidelity to evidence-based practices and consider aspects of the program that affect participants' outcomes, such as staff skills and community linkages. You should address any deficiencies by providing training to service providers about general and specific topics such as reentry and risk. Lastly, jurisdictions should develop strategies to hold service providers accountable, such as a performance-based contracting system. The last trend we've seen, and something I'd really like to emphasize here, is about action research and the evolving role of the research partner. Historically, we've seen evaluations that are post hoc, where a jurisdiction sends something like an Excel file over to a local university partner. While we certainly encourage working with your local university partner, we do not encourage that sort of relationship. Instead, the research partner role should be proactive. Your research partners should be involved in developing and supporting your intervention. They should be co-designers, and they should not only help you design the evaluation, but also the intervention. And they can do that by observing, monitoring, and providing feedback. Your research partners should also be subject matter experts. Of course, we appreciate that there are some lingering obstacles to this transition. A history of data use and abuse, perhaps your agencies have experienced a difficulty measuring outcomes, and there are some capacity and records issues. Our technical assistance is available to help you navigate those issues. And you'll have the opportunity to learn more about this at the Second Chance Act Conference in December, when we host a workshop with BJA about developing effective research practitioner partnerships. Smart Supervision Grant projects are implementing these trends or other innovative ideas, so I'm sure those last few slides were familiar. BJA and the field are looking to you to learn about whether and how those strategies work. The purpose of the Smart Supervision Program is to support the development and implementation of evidence-based probation and parole programs that effectively address the needs of offenders, improve supervision success rates, and reduce recidivism. So, what does that all mean? Well, I'd like to introduce a continuing Smart Supervision Grantee to share their experience and put a finer point on things. Jillian is the Director of Research at the Philadelphia Adult Probation and Parole Department. Philadelphia received a Smart Supervision Grant in fiscal year 2013. Jillian is here today to share her experience with you. Jillian, the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to Heather and Daisy for having me on today. It's really exciting that I can kind of talk about what my experience has been like through this process and the experience for my agency. And I'd also like to say congratulations to the 2015 grantees. That's very exciting for you, and you're going to be embarking on a really worthwhile mission that will certainly, where you'll certainly encounter challenges, but hopefully you'll be able to do something that your agency wouldn't have been able to do otherwise without the grant support. So I'll just give you a very brief introduction to what the design of our grant was. But before I do that, I'm just going to orient you to the fact that I work at the Philadelphia Adult Probation and Parole Department, and we supervise county probation and parole cases. At any given time, we are supervising around 45,000 offenders with around 250 case-carrying officers. So we're a very big agency. So a lot of the components of the grant that we're putting in place, you know, it's been challenging and it's been slow going, but we have seen some notable successes. So the goal of our project was really to enhance our efforts to address the unmet needs of our moderate and high-risk offenders. And we aim to do that by fully implementing the R&R, the risk-need responsivity model. So the goal of the grant was for us to train our high and moderate risk officers in the use of a needs tool in case management techniques and in supervision planning. To support these efforts, we also aim to create a customized criminogenic needs assessment tool specifically for us and our population. We also wanted to identify the services that were available to our clientele by really looking at the capacity we had locally to meet the need that was identified by the assessment. And then moving forward, we would hope to institutionalize these practices and procedures. So this would be, you know, a culture change in the agency that we could maintain for a long time. So I was also asked to discuss why we selected this as our focus for the Smart Supervision Grant. And in 2009, our agency reorganized the entire department using an empirical risk tool that was developed for us by academics at the University of Pennsylvania. So basically, every case that we have coming into our supervision is scored initially and then supervised according to the risk level and specialized conditions that are given to us by the court. We were pretty happy with this tool. We actually noticed that we had sizable reductions in new offending after we switched to this model. But we soon realized that addressing risk is not enough and that we really needed to focus on identifying and treating the needs that our population presented. So this grant has really allowed us to do several things. First, we've been able to work with experts in the community corrections fields at George Mason University. So we've been working with Faye Taxman and her team of dedicated researchers throughout this process. The few things that they've been able to do for us in the meantime include conducting a survey of our treatment providers to really get a sense of what types of services are available to us and what the capacity is for delivering those services, so we can really see if we have any gaps that we need to work towards filling on an internal level so we can make sure that we're doing the best we can to meet the need that we identify. And throughout the process, since 2013, George Mason University has worked with us on implementing a variety of different tools and strategies at the agency. Most notably, we were able to train our entire department in a computerized training on needs assessment, or needs identification, and also motivational interviewing. So our entire staff completed the online modules that were put together by George Mason University. And I'm happy to say that instead of just training people and then, you know, leaving it up to them to use the skills, we also have our supervisors in the agency conducting in-person observations of our officers and how they interact with the clientele. And then they get immediate feedback, and that feedback is recorded for us so we can really see how people are using these skills that they were trained on. So at this point, we have over 1,000 observations that we've logged since we started this process in June. So we're really proud of that. We also are still working on finalizing our customized needs assessment that will really be something that will be efficient for officers to use in helping to identify the criminogenic needs that are presented by a certain client. And then as a complementary component to that, we're also designing a case plan that will help our officers work with the clients to set short-term and long-term goals to work towards reducing the likelihood that they will reoffend and hopefully addressing the criminogenic needs that are identified. And then our final part of the process is we're trying to design a structure of rewards and sanctions that will be dispersed to offenders once they're either fully compliant or they work towards making headway in addressing their criminogenic needs, and also to address and respond to sanctions when they are non-compliant. So I'll just close with giving the 2015 grantees some advice. moving forward. And I can say that it's really important as you begin your grant process to think about planning for turnover. Turnover with staff members is inevitable. I can say that in my personal experience, I myself replaced the original director of research who began the grant process. So I've only been involved in this process since May. So it's really important that you plan for inevitable turnover with staff and with partners. So it's really important to really document everything you're doing and make sure that you have records of all the decisions that have been made for any new staff that do come on and work with the grant. Another piece of advice I can give is that on an interagency basis, really try to develop internal support for these new policies and practices. It's really important that you have mid-level administrators or people who work on the ground who can be identified as experts in the whatever program or whatever skill you're trying to train the whole agency on. So we have actually identified supervisors within our agency that receive extra training, and there are on-the-ground resources for the line officers. So if they have a question or they need assistance with something, they're really there to try to help promote the skill and help fine-tune officers really acquiring and developing those skills as they learn all the new things we're trying to teach them. And then finally, I would say that it's really important to think about the sustainability of the programs that you put in place. Right now, one of the challenges that we are encountering is trying to find a way to make sure that the needs assessment and the case plan that we're developing will seamlessly work with our electronic case management system. And so moving forward, that's something that we still have to identify a solution to, a long-term solution. But it is really important to think about making sure that the efforts that you put forth during the grant period are sustained over a longer period of time. So with that, I will close and say congratulations to everyone again, and good luck with your grants.
Thank you, Jillian. I imagine that it was really helpful for folks to hear about what this means in practice and to put a finer point on things. At this point, I will turn the floor over to Julie James at BJA to talk about her agency's expectations for SMART grantees, and I'm sure you'll see a connection to the trends that we just reviewed. Julie, are you on the line? Julie, have you been able to join us? Well, for now, I will jump in, and if Julie joins us, I'm sure she will take over. So BJA expects certain goals, deliverables, and objectives from the Smart Supervision Grantees. You know what, I'm sorry, folks, I'm going to pause here. I see that Julie has just hopped on the line, and I'd like to give her a second to take over this portion. Just bear with us for one moment, please. As we go along, if anybody has any questions, we invite you to enter them in the Q&A box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the content portion of the webinar. And I think we're having a bit of an audio difficulty, so I'm going to get started on this slide, but if it looks like Julie will be able to jump in, Julie, I invite you to just take the floor from me whenever you can. So the first series of goals, deliverables, and objectives that BJA expects from Smart Supervision Grantees is a pretty broad one related to improving supervision strategies to reduce recidivism and provide training, technical assistance, and policy support. Julie, would you like to take the floor from here?
Sure. Heather, can you hear me?
We've got you.
Great. So we are at 24, yes?
Yes, we are, and I've just gone through the very first bullet.
Okay, great. First, apologies for my late entrance here, but I couldn't be more excited about this group of grantees. You all turned in some really excellent proposals, and it was a tough choice for us. So that's always a great sign. And I've loved seeing the development over time of where the field is and how that's reflected in these, the sort of cream of the crop that you all represent. So turning back to the slide, we are continuing to push for increasing collaboration among agencies and those who impact community corrections. So, thinking about collaborations with police, with healthcare providers, service providers, and others who really are key to your mission. Another goal of the program is to develop and implement strategies for the identification, supervision, and treatment of the high-risk, high-needs supervisees to serve as a model for other agencies, given that this is the best way to target our resources and consistent with evidence-based practices. Another objective here is to enroll uninsured supervisees into Medicaid or other insurance through health exchanges and connect them to treatment providers. Again, this is an area that where criminal justice straddles a couple of different worlds, and this is a new world for many community corrections agencies. But I think we've been seeing great strides in this area, given that a lot of the services that people on probation or parole need to meet their needs can be funded through these resources. So it's a real benefit to be able to make the most of this. Then objectively assess and evaluate the impact of innovative and evidence-based supervision and treatment strategies. That's really at the core of the research partnership that we support through this program, because we believe that this will help advance the field tremendously to be able to share what we're doing through this program. And then to demonstrate the use and efficacy of evidence-based practices and principles to improve the delivery of supervision strategies and practices. And this really speaks to the scaling up and out of all of your implementations of evidence-based practices. What you learn will benefit others and will help advance our knowledge. Regarding mandatory project components, you are required to demonstrate agency commitment to the proposed initiative, which you all have done through your letters by your executives, to demonstrate the appropriate use and integration of evidence-based principles, and that's you did that through your program narrative and what you propose to do, and then an evaluation. And this is we are envisioning sort of a spectrum of things and didn't have we have some sort of minimum requirements, but we expect that the evaluation activities will be tailored to what you're proposing for your project. And I believe that is all for me.
Thank you very much, Julie. In this next section, we're going to talk about the technical assistance that is available to you through the National Reentry Resource Center. Daisy's going to lead us off. Daisy?
Thanks, Heather. And thanks, Julie. Thanks, Jillian, for helping us and imparting your knowledge. So the Bureau of Justice Assistance administers the Smart Supervision Grant Program. Grantees are accountable to them for financial and progress reports. state policy advisors at BJA are your point of contact for reporting and budget-related questions. Then you also have CSR Incorporated, who administers a performance measurement tool that you're responsible to complete at regular intervals. I believe it's quarterly, as outlined in the grant solicitation. So your TA provider, me, Daisy Diallo, at the NRRC, will provide a variety of support related to content and facilitation. Now, next slide, please. Our role is to help you meet the requirements of the grant. In doing so, we can offer on-site and distance-based education and learning opportunities for staff, share lessons learned across jurisdictions, facilitate conversations with federal partners, and engage in a discussion around how adopting practices can impact policy and procedure or require revision of these. Next slide, please. We also want to do a good job of helping translate research for practice. And sometimes we'll literally, get some research and help you operationalize it. And other times you'll teach us, right? You give us an idea of what you did, what innovative approaches you took to translating the research. Then we also offer general program guidance, assistance with reporting outcomes to stakeholders. So, maybe identifying measures and strategies to track progress, sharing successes with stakeholders, the field, and the press. Then we also provide support to public education efforts as well. Thank you. And so what does technical assistance look like in practice? Every grantee is going to have a standing call with me, and at times you'll have more frequent contacts with me. We're always available via phone and email, so you should never hesitate to reach out. We're also going to conduct site visits sometimes where necessary, and there may be commonalities across your smart supervision projects with past grantee projects. Those commonalities will include various trouble spots, and we can bring forth lessons learned and share resources from those past experiences or from our learning experiences as well. Next slide, please. Oh, there you go. Heather?
We developed a tool for the Smart Supervision program called the Planning and Implementation Guide. You'll hear us refer to it as the P&I Guide for short. The P&I Guide is a tool to identify your implementation goals and define your measurement objectives. It helps you to define a comprehensive program that is organized around evidence-based practices, to communicate progress, to think about your evaluation and sustainability. It also helps us to have a sense of what's coming down the pike so that we can provide the best technical assistance possible. And perhaps most importantly, the P&I Guide will help you to stay in compliance with BJA's expectations for the grant. I'd also like to point out, Jillian mentioned earlier, to keep staff turnover in mind. And as you'll see in a moment, this guide is a very useful way to document what are the intentions of your program, what are the activities, and what information should be considered institutional knowledge that you have to pass along. It's a user-friendly tool. We appreciate that everyone has a lot on their plate, and this tool is not just another thing on your to-do list. It will actually serve as a roadmap to your SMART project that will ensure everyone at your agency and your third-party evaluator stay on the same page. The P&I Guide is organized into two parts, as you see on your screen. The first part reviews the rationale for your project. What is the problem you're seeking to address? It also inventories any partner organizations. This will be in short answer format and shouldn't take too much effort. It effectively confirms what you've already provided in your proposal. The second part of the guide is the meat. The second part is sort of a logic model. It serves as a systematic guide and asks the question, given the problems and goals identified, why do we think that what we are doing will have the intended effect? The The logic model will ask you to link objectives to activities, to participants, such as staff or clients, to process measures, to outcomes, and to outcome measures. In walking through these steps, you'll also be able to develop a clear timeline so that BJA and you are in agreement about the types of outcomes and evaluation measures that you will be able to provide. Technical assistance is available to support completion of the guide. The guide will be available next month and will be due to your TA provider, to Daisy, at the end of March. This concludes the presentation portion of today's webinar. With that, we will go ahead and answer questions. Please continue to enter questions in the Q&A panel box in the bottom right portion of your screen. We will get to as many questions as we can, and we'll be sure to follow up about any questions that we are unable to address. We will display our contact information during Q&A. Please do not hesitate to follow up with any of us directly. And now I'll give us a moment for folks to enter your questions. Please include questions for the Justice Center, for BJA, or any follow-up questions that you may have for Jillian about Philadelphia's experience. At this time, we welcome questions about requirements of the grant program, about our technical assistance, about the Second Chance Act conference. And in the absence of those questions, please feel free to ask another question. We have our first question about the Second Chance Act conference in December. We have been asked if a jurisdiction is the recipient of 2 awards, is the training for both of the awards? Second Chance Act grantees are expected to send teams of 3 to represent each Second Chance Act award, meaning if you have 2 grant awards, your jurisdiction should be sending 6 individuals to participate in the Second Chance Act conference. I'd like to give everyone another moment to send in any questions. I realize this was a lot of information. I hope you have gained a clear understanding of the origins of the Smart Supervision Project, grant program, and of the trends that your different programs represent, and also of the areas of interest to BJA. If we have no further questions at this time, we can wrap up, but I invite you to contact us via email with any questions you have. As Daisy mentioned, she'll be reaching out shortly at the end of this month and in early December to schedule your official technical assistance orientation calls. The planning and implementation guide will also be available early next month. And again, we remind you to log on to our website and to sign up for our distribution list so that you can receive updates about resources to the field, about webinars, about training opportunities. Funding opportunities are also posted on our website and through our distribution list. It's a great place to think about sustainability opportunities. In the absence of any further questions, we will conclude the webinar. We will email a link to the recording of this presentation, as well as a link to the PDF of the PowerPoint slides in the coming weeks. These links will also be made available on the National Reentry Resource Center's website. And again, I encourage you to sign up for the newsletter. Thank you to Jillian and Julie for presenting with us today. And thank you to everyone on the line for your participation. Again, congratulations on your fiscal year 2015 Smart Supervision Grant. We look forward to getting to know you and working with you in the months ahead.